So forget the console war. Quite possibly the biggest war to be watching right now is the VR battle that's getting ready to heat up. And there are a lot of devices that are going to be launching later this year and into 2016. You've got Samsung, which actually already has a VR headset out on the market. To be honest, I haven't heard that much about it. You've got HTC and Valve that are teaming up to bring one by the end of the year. You've also got Oculus, which is probably the most well-known name in the VR world, and they are launching later in 2015. And then you've got Sony, which announced Morpheus is going to be launching in the first half of 2016. So they're going to be actually one of the last ones to come into the market. So you've got a lot of companies who are all vying for the same crowd. And it's not just the companies that are competing against one another. You've also got a lot of hurdles that are standing in the way just in the form of virtual reality in and of itself. So first, let's talk about some of the good news that's come out over the last several days. You've got Valve, who has claimed that they have figured out motion sickness. They say their technology currently has a 0% motion sickness rate, and that the key is being able to accurately track your movement, and they're using some sort of lasers in order to do that, in order to make sure that you stay in sync with the game. So whenever you move your head, it's happening in game, because they say whenever you lose that sync, that's whenever a lot of that sickness comes about. You've also got Sony's Morpheus, which has received a pretty big upgrade. It's got higher resolution now, and also it's capable of delivering higher frames per second. And a lot of people also walked away saying that Morpheus was a lot more comfortable this time around due to different adjustments, and it was actually one of the most comfortable devices there. And a few people actually wore glasses, and they said they walked away impressed. They said wearing glasses didn't negatively impact them at all, which is a big plus as far as I'm concerned, because that's always been one of the biggest things that I've been worried about. So the technology is certainly improving, but if you stand back and you really look at it, this could be a big uphill battle for everyone involved, even if you do work out the kinks with the technology. Because first, you got to consider this. According to the developers themselves, it only takes 20 seconds for someone to become motion sick using VR. And if you've ever met anybody with food aversion, like, you know, you go out to eat somewhere, you get a meal, somebody gets like food poisoning or they get sick or something from eating something, and then they refuse to eat that meal again, even though they may have liked it at the time they actually ingested it, but because they got sick, that is what's on their mind. And so once they try it and they get sick, they do not want to have anything to do with it again. And the same thing will happen with VR. You'll have some people who are going to get sick and they are never going to want to try this again. That's just human nature. And it literally just takes one time before they're done. And despite Valve's claims that they have figured out motion sickness, there's a lot of people who say you can't solve motion sickness simply through technology. They say a lot of the problem with motion sickness is actually the games themselves and how you interact with that world. And so they feel like some of the best experiences are kind of more like on the rails type experiences, because they say too much freedom can actually allow you to, you know, lose that control, lose sync, and then that's what causes motion sickness. And at GDC this week, there was a discussion from an engineer who actually works at Disney, and that's what he does for a living, is he studies rides and tries to make sure that these rides aren't going to make the public sick, at least the majority of them. You always have some people who are going to get sick regardless. You know, some people get sick in a car. You can't, you know, stop building cars because of that. So we really don't know how big the impact is going to be and how many people are truly going to be affected by this. We've already heard some reviews where some people have an impact and some people don't. But if you look at almost all of these interviews, this is their number one concern, is not wanting to put out a product that makes anybody sick. And so in order to do that, you're actually going to have to limit some of the games that are out there on the market. And Sony is actually already talking about this. Here's what Yoshida said. He said, quote, "We've been making it easier and easier to get games on PS4, especially for indies. But for VR, we might have to do a bit more checking like we used to do, because we really don't want people to get sick while playing Morpheus games." And then, of course, this leads to the next concern, which is content, and having a lot of content so that it's worthwhile for people to invest in this technology, and how many solid games and experiences are going to be available. And a lot of devs have come out and stated that in order to really get the best experience, you need to have games that are built from the ground up with this in mind. And it doesn't really work that well to take existing games and then try to port them over. Although some people are doing this and it appears to be okay, but you've got some devs saying that's just cutting a lot of corners. So how many people are going to be willing to invest a lot of money and a lot of time and effort into these devices when you've got so many different ones on the market? And it could just be a niche market where the audience just isn't that big, so you don't have as much of an opportunity in order to make your money back that you invest into it. And so Yoshida also talked about this. He talked about how third party and working with these other companies trying to build a marketplace where you can get these virtual experiences is going to be key, because you are going to have to build a sort of marketplace for this. And another thing that he mentioned was how you're also only looking at potentially 15 to 20% of the entire PS4 customer base as potential customers for this product. So you're already, your numbers just keep on getting smaller and smaller the more that you divide this out. And then the other potential problem, of course, is the price point, which is going to be another factor determining how many people are going to be able to invest in this. And companies like Sony really aren't saying anything as far as price point goes, but I am glad that they are focusing on quality. So like they just showed all these improvements at GDC, but you gotta know that these improvements aren't going to come free. So it is going to cost something in order to get a product that is going to deliver the experiences that you would expect it to. But then the question is, what kind of experiences are you expecting? A lot of gaming, a lot of, sitting down and watching a movie, you do it socially with other people. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. And whenever you're in a room and your entire vision is obscured, some people don't even like wearing 3D glasses. So while the idea of stepping into that world and gaming like that for a few minutes or an hour or so, may seem okay, is it really going to be something where people are going to feel comfortable sitting for hours at a time with this on your face? And at least with devices like Morpheus, they've already said they're not looking at any sort of wireless device. So this is going to be a tethered experience. And then finally, I guess the last thing that I think is at least worth mentioning is the unknowns. Is this potentially doing any sort of damage to your eyes? Is it changing your brain in any sort of way? How could this sitting on your face for hours at a time affect your neck or your back or anything else, later on in life? So there are a lot of unknowns because this is so new. And the only reason I bring this up is because I'm not the first one to bring it up. I was actually watching a Microsoft conference from a few years ago, and they were talking about their augmented reality, and they had an MIT professor up there. And I mean, this wasn't a PR spill, so he's not trying to sell anybody on anything, but he was talking about the differences between virtual reality and augmented reality. And he said that they looked at virtual reality and studied it for a while, And what they found was that it did rewire your brain, and that there were too many people who did end up getting sick due to this. But again, you know, that was from a couple of years ago. Technology is advancing. It's advanced a lot just from the past year. So this is going to be something we're not going to have to speculate about for very long. You are going to get to see it unfold over the next several months. Virtual reality, you know, it could be the biggest thing since cell phones, or it could crash and burn. You know, can they control the motion sickness? Can they deliver the games? And can they bring worthwhile experiences, all while doing it comfortably and doing it safely? So I think it's ambitious, and I am excited to see what comes about it. And depending on, you know, the reviews, depending on how well this actually works, you know, I may end up picking up one and sharing it with you. So we will stay on top of it. You want to read more about it, links down in the description box. Post below, what do you think about the challenges facing VR? Is this going to be something that is the future of gaming, or is it a fad? That does it for me, the Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Are you listening? Damn.